Hi, this is Sam Evans, and I'm a longtime GSAE member. I'm a CAE, and I work for the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. So we work with people that remove barriers for the digital and the physical space to make sure that the world is accessible for everyone as a person with a disability, whether that's diagnosed or disclosed or not, to make the world better for everyone. And accessibility also benefits our companies, ourselves, and our teams. So I'm going to share a little bit with us today about using the built-in structures and elements in PowerPoint and presentation modes so that your presentations and content can be more accessible for all. So I'm joined with Wendy Kavanaugh from GSAE today, and I'm happy to have a chance to talk amongst us GSAE folks about how to do this. So on the screen, so first off, when you're doing presentations, a nice way to introduce yourself is to also include descriptions of you as a person and your identity, especially if you're in a group discussion. So if I were to introduce myself in a panel discussion, say, my name is Samantha Evans, I'm a white woman with curly gray hair, I'm wearing a green top, I'm in my home office, and I have sparkly purple glasses on. So if somebody with a different cultural, ethnic, religious, or other identity is able to identify themselves, that also brings a bit of humanity to the presentation and helps you get to know a little bit about the person. It doesn't need to be your whole bio, but it does help represent if somebody's on the phone, like if they're in their car and they aren't able to dial in for their Zoom on their computer, or they're in a sunny space and they can't see well because not all devices do well in bright spaces. It's a nice way to be able to share the visual information about the person and their identity for your presenter. So, but today we're going to talk a little bit about PowerPoint. We're going to talk about presentations. I'm working from PowerPoint. These same goals will apply whether you're using a Mac product or something in the Google Suite. So you can apply these same tenets because the same structural elements and best practices will work no matter what kind of slide presentation you're making. On my screen, I'm sharing a slide, and there's a big graphic that says that the title slide is accessibility baked right in. I'm using the template built into PowerPoint because the template with headers and sections actually works for navigation. We'll talk a little bit about how that helps people who use assistive technology navigate your slide if they're using a computer-based assistant product. But I'm looking at a big graphic, and if you have sight, you'll be able to see that there's a brown man on the left and a white woman, and they are standing at a countertop, and the man is holding a whisk and the woman is pouring a box of blueberries into a bowl of batter. So they're mixing up batter. And so we're going to presume, because of this analogy, is that they're making blueberry muffins. On the right-hand side of this image, of this panel, there is the same brown man and white woman, and they're at a countertop and they have blueberry muffins and they're all baked and they're in paper cups. Then the woman still has the cup of the box of blueberries, and they're not in the muffins. They forgot to put the muffins in the mix. And so the man is smashing the blueberries down, and he's attempting to put the blueberries in the muffins after they're baked. Because he's attempting to put accessibility in after the fact. So the analogy in accessibility is that blueberry muffins, you have to put the muffins in the batter before you bake them to make them blueberry muffins. So I just described to you what is on the image. And as part of an inclusive presentation, it's really important that you describe anything that you refer to visually. We may have gotten comfortable in years past of saying, well, you can see, obviously, what's happening. But not everyone has supervision. Not everybody has the ability to look at the screen that you're sharing. And for people who are blind or low vision, they are going to rely on the information being in your slide in the background because they may be reading the slides in advance or along with your presentation. So for graphics and images, including charts and infographics, it's really important that we share what's called alternative text. And really what you're doing is you want to make a text equivalent. We're basing this on the human experience so that everybody has equal access and the same opportunity to engage. So while it's called alt for alternative text, it really is a text equivalent. So I'm going to select the image, and I am going to, let's see if I can, there we go. So I've pulled up the menu for editing the picture. And in Microsoft PowerPoint, one of the options is edit alt text. So whether you have alt text in place or not, you have the option to edit alt text. A lot of programs will have artificial intelligence that will take an effort and try to create alt text that often is not anything close to what's displayed. So it's always a good practice to check your edit alt text button. So I have created the alt text already, and things to consider in alt text, it doesn't have to be a really long description, but it needs to be equitable. Consider what you can do in what used to be a tweet, 120, 140 characters, and understand that unless you're writing long form detail, screen readers and other assistive technologies stop at about 250 characters for what they read. But for somebody who is using a screen reader, what will happen when they get to the image is their computer will say image, alt text, and then their computer will read the description that is in this alt text box, which is what I just described to you, and includes that the woman has her hand raised to her face in disbelief. So this is the alt text so that someone who couldn't see the picture, their computer could relay to them what the importance and the value is in the graphic. So there is a generated description for me, which I promise will not be useful for most everything, except if you have a picture of a cat, it might say could be an animal. So be aware of what your alt text creation is. If it is something that is purely decorative that you've only put because it's a swirly or, a little piece of flair, you can mark it as decorative, because things that are decorative in nature don't require text equivalents because they aren't trying to relay anything important. So this is just an example for graphics, and I can show you on another screen, but I just wanted to share with you what it looks like, how you might describe it in an audio format, and how you access the menu in Microsoft Office. Google Slides are the same, and in presentation and Mac products, there's also an option to edit your alt texts. So one of the things that you also might look at is how you list things in lists. So one of the structural elements that is important to follow, and when I talk about structures, I'm talking about what it looks like when you choose your slide type. So I believe that I'm also showing the display of new slide where you get to choose your templates. And if you haven't had a template set up yet for your office, your team, your brand, it might be a good thing to engage with somebody that specializes in creating templates so that they can create a set of templates for you that everyone under your brand can use, so that everything looks the same and it presents the same. But what slide structure elements do and why it matters is that for this first option is title and subtitle divider, that an assistive technology piece would read the title first and then the subtitle. In a title in 2 columns, it would read the title first and then column 1 and then column 2. So the structural elements in PowerPoint and how you set up your templates help guide computers in reading the information in the order you want it delivered. Now, visually, we may presume that everyone tracks the same, but a computer only knows the read order when you tell it the read order. So the structural template formats are really important for that. What I've used on this slide that has a title that says, "Is digital accessibility really a thing?" I have a graphic in the lower right side of the slide, and I'll pick it up here and show you the edit alt text option. I have my edited alt text of illustration of 4 human figures, each using a type of technology. So I've got the alt text displayed for this. I've already typed that in. But what's important over here is that I have used, when I'm in this text box that is a preset delivery of title and content box, I have used, I've actually used the structural elements of a bulleted list. And the way that makes a difference, if you're in the ribbon, is what it's called in Microsoft products up top, you have the option of bullets, like create a bulleted list, create a numbered list, is that when assistive technology is reading your slides, and if you export to PDF, it will tell the reader this is a bulleted list. So their computer will know that what they're about to hear is a list, which is very different than putting a wingding in of a dot and then typing words and then a hard return, because it cues people up to be aware of what's coming next. So using the structural elements in the ribbon is really important. And choosing slide templates that will help you create the content you want. I'm sliding down to another slide where I have a larger list, a bulleted list, and then a further bulleted list. So when somebody is reading the slide using a computer, whether they're having Google, Siri, or Narrator, or a screen reader, even your built-in browser text-to-speech tools need to know what they're looking for. They're going to know this slide is a title with a content box and an image. So it's important to use these templates. So if you haven't gotten to know your slide template formats and your options, get to know those, because what we may have done in the past, which was I want to create a new text box. I'm going to insert a text box. If you go to insert a text box over here and put things in this and a text box down here, it's really possible that somebody that's using technology to read your slide isn't going to get to that information. Text boxes are kind of like overlays, and in the way back machine, for those of us that remember transparencies, it's a bit like putting a transparency over a book, but that you can only read what's in the book. So use the built-in components that are in your slide templates for design elements, so that you can pick a list of bulleted text box, or just a title only, or blank where you might put an image in. Use your templated PowerPoint tools first as your preferences. That will help the reader. It will also help you when you go to export your slides. So if you're asked to provide your slides, not in the authoring format, not in your primary format of PowerPoint, but you're asked to provide a PDF, you don't have to be a tech whiz to be able to do this well. If you have built in all of your components for your accessibility features, you've used your slide type, you've used your bulleted list and your numbered list instead of wingdings, instead of text boxes. You've used you've pasted your graphics into a space, and you've checked your read order. So one thing you can do, before we go to PDF, is under review in all Google, Apple, and Microsoft products, there is always going to be an accessibility check. In the Microsoft ribbon, it's in the upper left, and it is going to ask you to check anything that's missing. So I've already verified my read order in these slides, but let me show you what a read order looks like. So in read order for PowerPoint, it's a little backwards. What needs to be at the bottom is what's at the top. Can't explain why, it's just something good to know, but your title should be what's at the bottom. Then what should be next? So this should be at the bottom, this should be second, this should be it. So it's kind of upside down for PowerPoint. So title, content placeholder, picture. So that's the read order. So we verified the read order. So that's just something to check. The warnings may not be real, but they just don't know it's a computer. All it knows is what it can read. So your read order is important. I've checked that. All of my alt text is in place because it's not giving me warnings. So I've put my alt text in for all of my images. I've used titles and information. So if you're ready to export, so I'm in Microsoft PowerPoint, I'm going to choose export. So what you don't want to do if you're trying to keep accessibility in mind is don't save as Adobe PDF. I know that's what you think. Hey, I'll just save it as a PDF. No. If you're trying to incorporate accessibility, use export. And when you get to export, you get the option to create a PDF/XPS document. What this does is it invites you to investigate accessibility. And when you get to this point for exporting, it will allow you to choose open after file publishing, standard publishing options, but check your options, because your options are to make it PDF-A compliant. This is the piece that keeps every piece of that structural element you created so that it creates an accessible PDF. So it keeps those features in place. So I'm going to publish that. Let's see if we can get this to come through. And I'm going to pull this over and let me see, Wendy, can you see the PDF displaying now?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on just a second. I've got to change my Zoom to show the right screen. So hang on just a second. let me choose the PDF. There we go. So I'm on the PDF now. So this is the PDF of what we were looking at. When you're in a PDF, there is under more tools. So we're not in an advanced, we're just in Acrobat Pro DC. You can't do this with Reader, but under more tools on Adobe, if you'll scroll down, I'm on the Adobe tools. It's offering things. There's a circle that's purple with a human figure in it called accessibility. And if I open the accessibility checker, which I selected that little human figure, there's an option for accessibility check. But I want to show you what you need to know, the human experience. This is how a computer will know what's in this document to read it to a person. The tags, it looks like a tag, like you would see a clothing tag at a retail store. Tags are the things that computers read. And so in PowerPoint, what this has is there's a section header. So it tells me this is a section, it tells me there's a text box, it tells me there's a figure. So what's happened is we use the right pieces in PowerPoint, we export it to PDF UA, and that gives us a PDF document that can be read and navigated by somebody using assistive technology. So we've used the tools in PowerPoint with the structures provided. We've written our alt text. We checked our read order. We exported to PDF UA. And now we have a PDF that can be shared with everyone, and anyone can read it no matter what their assistive technology is. This is just bare bones, but it's a great way to make your presentations accessible. I hope that helps. And if you have other questions, Wendy's going to share some other resources that I provided in another presentation.
Sam, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today to give all of our speakers an opportunity to make their material more accessible. And when we were preparing for this presentation of yours, I thought it was really important to highlight the human aspect. We want GSAE attendees to learn and to have all the opportunities to learn in the way that they learn best. And this is one more tool that we can offer to make sure that our education is accessible and effective. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I will have more materials ready for everyone. And thanks for joining us.